30th anniversary.
Thank you very much. It was easy. I didn't have to do anything. I had to stay alive for 30 years, 30 more years.
How does it feel to have hit this landmark?
Bit strange, I suppose. You kind of don't. When I started the group, I didn't really kind of plan any kind of longevity to it. Really, I just you just do what you do. You write songs. You're with your mates, and you start a group, and then you make records, and then suddenly you've been doing it for 30 odd years. It kind of, I remember seeing I think it was Parkinson or something, some chat show, and Tony Curtis was on there, and he was celebrating 50 years in Hollywood or whatever. And I remember the interview saying, what does it feel like? And he said, I literally feel like I arrived in Hollywood yesterday, and now I'm talking to you today. It's kind of it's just gone, that time. And at the time, I didn't really understand what he was saying, but I think now I can see that really.
Yeah.
Because I've done nothing else for all these years, and it's suddenly here I am now, and people are celebrating these ridiculously sound. I remember laughing when it was status quo, 30 years in the business, and that was in the 80s, and suddenly. Yeah. I'm at that level now, which is kind of odd, really. So it's a strange feeling.
Well, I mean, everyone seems to be rocking all over the world when they hit 30. So, how did this album come about? Did you work with Steve Albini?
Albini, yeah. Well, basically, we did the first LP, George Best, on our own label. Then we signed to RTA, and we did another one called Bizarro. And I kind of liked those records, but to me, they still didn't feel like they were kind of capturing what the band sounded like. I think they were good records, I think they were good songs. Obviously, popular. I've got a silver disc for Bizarro somewhere on the wall. But it didn't really sound like the band that I was hearing at concerts and in rehearsal rooms even, and I just felt like, there was something else that was missing. Yeah. At the same time, I heard Surfer Rosa by the Pixies, which I thought was an amazing record. Yeah. Sorry, did you hear me?
Yeah, no, Surfer Rosa, it's a superb album.
Sorry, I thought you said who. And I thought that was it was, I think they were brilliant band and the songs were amazing, etc. But I thought the sound of that record was also fascinating. It was kind of natural, but at the same time a bit odd sounding and a bit, it sounded like a band playing together really, even though it was edited from different takes and things. And I noticed that the engineer was Steve Albini, and I was familiar with his work and his bands and his own bands at that time. Big Black being one of them.
Okay.
And I just, we talked about it as a group, and I just felt, it could be somebody who we could use as an engineer for the next Wedding Present record. So we did a single with him. We did Brass Neck. I think we did another one as well. We did a couple of singles to see how it worked really, the relationship. And straight away it suddenly sounded a bit bigger and a bit more three-dimensional and a bit more texture to it. I don't know whether that was wholly down to him or whether we were kind of evolving as a group as well. We were kind of stepping up, because until that point we were very much a kind of very fast guitars, kind of jangly sound, kind of indie sound, I suppose. And I think at that point we were looking a bit more, to move away from that. So we were experimenting more with distortion and dynamics in the sound, and not every song had to be 100 miles an hour. We could do slower ones and stuff. So
yeah.
I think it was a combination of the band changing, and then here was a sympathetic engineer who could bring us out, bring out the best in how we sounded anyway. Really, so
that's brilliant.
But well.
No, he worked with Nirvana, didn't he, Steve Albini?
Did, yes.
Yes. Had he worked with them concurrent, or was that a bit after?
remember, to be honest. It's a good question. You have to Google that one. Because I know he did. I think he did. I think it was later. I think after.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first Nirvana was Butch Vig, and then I think Albini recorded the album after they got massive.
Okay.
Which was I think that was after Sea Monsters.
Okay. I noticed on the Wikipedia page that John Peel was a champion of your band. How did that feel?
It was obviously very flattering. I mean, I got. Sorry, I just got a text.
That's all right.
I did kind of. I mean, I suppose there's two answers. One is that I was a massive fan of John Peel's program from the moment I discovered him, when I was probably about 16 or 17 in the 70s, and kind of became obsessed with it really. And I listened to every program. If I wasn't going to be in, I used to tape it. I kind of up until his death really, I hardly missed a show. Even when I lived in America for a while, and I used to get friends to tape it because it was before the internet. Really. I used to get friends to send me cassettes and things. And so the music he played kind of shapes my musical taste, I suppose, and the influences that I had were all stuff that he played on the radio. So when we sort of came to be played on this show and do Peel sessions and stuff, obviously it was the culmination of a dream, really, in one respect. But then on the other hand, it was kind of always going to be that, really, because he'd kind of shaped me. We were, I suppose in some ways we became one of the archetypal Peel bands. So had he not played our records on the radio, it would have been a bit weird, and B, very disappointing, because we were so kind of linked with that program. We've done loads of Peel sessions, we were in the Festive 50, and his annual end of the year chart and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we were kind of made for each other in a way.
That's good. That's good. Did you know any of the other kind of Peel bands like Micro Disney from Cork?
Didn't know Micro Disney. Obviously, I was familiar with them from Peel playing the records. I've never met them or anything. But yeah, I mean, most of the records he played, I used to like.
That's good.
I think that was his strength. Really, he was a good arbiter of taste, and also he had this kind of knowledge of rock music, pop music, if you like, going back to the 30s, I suppose. And so he was able to kind of reference stuff that had influenced what came later. That was always quite interesting, I think. I mean, he was a bit too powerful in a way, because if he didn't play a record, in those days it was very difficult. He was the only outlet, I think, for a lot of alternative bands. So if John Peel did play a record, it meant suddenly you had this national and international audience, which helped. I mean, our first single came out in 1985, and Peel played it. I think he played it about 10 times, and suddenly there were people writing to us and phoning us up and saying, "Come and play in Carlisle. We've got a little club or whatever." Nice. Whereas before that, it was me kind of
banging
with a 10 pennies in the phone box trying to call promoters in pubs and stuff. So it completely changed. Our profile really was just completely changed.
That's good.
If he hadn't played the record, and I know some bands who I've got friends with. I'm friends with some people who kind of always say to me, "Why didn't John Peel play our record?" And I don't know. I guess it was his taste. It just didn't work out. But they always had a bit more of a struggle than we did because of that, really.
Yeah. That seems pretty good. And where did the band name come from?
I just thought of it. I actually thought of it a few years before the band, funnily enough. Because I used to be a fan of a band called The Birthday Party.
Okay.
From Australia, Nick Cave's band. And I also thought that was a brilliant name, Birthday Party. And I kind of thought about the wedding present being a name, but I kind of shelved it at that time. This would be kind of in the early or kind of 1983 or something, because I thought it was too similar. I didn't want people to think, he's a fan of the birthday party. Not that we sound anything like the birthday party, but I was a fan of the birthday party, and suddenly I've got this band called The Wedding Present. And, I think the birthday party was named after a play, Pinter play or something, and I think The Wedding Present, it sounds more like a film or a book or a play or something. So,
it really does, yeah.
So that kind of appealed to me in the same way. But I didn't use it. And then when the band finally started making records in mid-80s, the birthday party were no longer in existence. So I thought, I'll just use that, go with my kind of original feeling, really.
That's pretty cool. No, it's a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I like it because it's odd. It didn't sound like a pop group. It sounded like a book or something. And so it's I kind of like that kind of not obviousness.
I mean, it's distinctive without being a bit too curmudgeonly, like say an orchestral maneuvers of orchestral maneuvers in the dark. I mean that's a mouthful to say.
Quite a big T-shirt that as well.
Yeah. I mean,
I always thought The Wedding Present was quite a lot to get on a T-shirt. I was always envious of a band like Blur or Pulp,
Oh God, yeah. Blur, yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, by then I think T-shirts were very much in vogue, so I think that was probably what they were thinking. Blur and Pulp. Okay, and are there any favorite tracks of yours from the album? Why do you think it still resonates with people?
I don't think I've got any favourite tracks. That's kind of like asking me to choose between my children in a way. I think if it's on the record, they're usually they're always of a standard which I'm happy with, so that's why they're on the record, really. I mean, strangely, it wasn't that well received at the time. I mean, people love it now, weirdly, and people see it as this iconic record and influential. But in retrospect, and I think at the time, it wasn't. We just, as I say, 2 years before we'd done this LP Bizarro, and I think the change was a bit too much for some people to go from that kind of jangly indie pop kind of sound suddenly to this darker, kind of rockier sound, I suppose. And it didn't sell. I think at the time it sold about half as many as Bizarro, and I remember, even in the NME and stuff, the reviews were quite scathing about it.
Oh dear.
So not that we cared particularly, but it's strange that as the years have passed, as the decades have moved on, it's actually now viewed in a much more positive way for some reason. So maybe it just took people longer to get into it, really.
Yeah. Well, that's what they say. I mean, Peter Gabriel and Genesis. I mean, it took them decades for people to appreciate The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and now that's considered the best Genesis album.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've talked about jangly guitars. Were you influenced by Roger McGuinn at all?
Not so much. No. I think it was more the Velvet Underground kind of jangly guitars. That kind of. One of my favourite albums was the Velvet Underground Live. I think it's called Live 1969 or something. Yeah. And it's double LP, and I think that's an amazing record. It's just a lot of it is that kind of there's a song called What Goes On, which I think is about 6 minutes long, and it's just these really simple chords played over and over again. And I think that sound was quite influential to us, really, at that point.
Yeah. Apparently Lou Reed told Bono, "You got to keep it simple, man. You got to keep it simple."
Yeah, I totally agree with that. A lot of my favourite bands are very simple and repetitive. I think you can overwrite sometimes in pop music. I hear like a new band, and it's. I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody, really, because if you listen to our first single, "Go Out and Get 'Em Boy," it sounds like 4 songs crammed together into 3 minutes or whatever. Yeah. But I think you get nervous. You think, okay, we've had this verse, we've got this chorus, but we need another bit here, and then is that a bit boring? So we should have another bit here, and then we've got an end section. And then, we should put an intro on as well. Suddenly you've got these all these bits, and often less is more. That's the cliche, really. But I think it's certainly true sometimes.
Well, it's as a writer myself, I often have to tell myself, no, hold it back, because it's easy. Yeah, you need to think from the reader's point of view. They don't want to read. They don't want to read something that's too cryptic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And are you hoping to bring this on the road once everything opens up?
We are. Yeah, because it was obviously the 30th anniversary. This year we planned concerts now. Actually, I think that the original ones were going to be starting in April, May, and we decided to do like a series of little mini tours through the year. And obviously, they got cancelled, got postponed until next year. So the ones up until I think about August have all been moved now to 2022.
Okay.
And then after that, there's still some in place where we'll play Sea Monsters live. I think there's quite a few in the UK, and then there's Dublin as well, and a little Irish tour in October, I think, and then some continental European dates. But I'm not sure whether they'll all go on, but that's the plan anyway.
Okay.
We're doing a live stream as well.
Yeah.
If you saw that, it's just got the note there. It's basically because we're based in Brighton now, and we're doing this live stream on the 29th of May, because I think the original album came out on the 28th of May 1991. So we're playing this, and then so the re-release comes out exactly 30 years later. Then on the Saturday after that, day after, we're doing this live stream from Brighton.
Okay.
So that's the nearest we've got to playing it live so far.
Where
it's up to the pandemic, really.
Did the wedding press narrowly miss Britpop, and what was your opinion of Britpop?
I loved it, really. I thought it was great that suddenly. It's funny, I said before that the Peel was the only outlet for us and bands of our nature, and I think that actually changed during that Britpop era, because suddenly, your Oasis and Blur and Pulp were on normal radio during the day, which I think previously to that it kind of been unheard of, really. So. I suppose we missed out because we've been going for a decade by then, and I think we've kind of lost any. Music's very pop music's very fashion orientated, and as soon as you've got a band who've been around for a while, nobody wants to kind of write about that band anymore because they've got all these new bands that are coming through.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to play that band on the radio because there's all these new records for the radio. So we had our moment of critical acclaim had gone by then, I think.
Okay. Where did the image for Sea Monsters come from?
It was a friend of ours who was we met him because he was a fan of the band. I think when that first single came out in 1995, he sent me a postcard, which he designed himself, and he was called Jonathan Hitcham. Hitch is his kind of name. His artist name is Hitch, and we liked the design of that postcard, and it transpired that he was a student, I think, at the time, doing graphic art, and so we got to know him a little bit, and so we did a couple of stuff. He did a compilation of people, Tommy, that we did, and a few singles. Then we signed to RCA. I don't think it was available for George Best or Bizarro. But then, when it came to Sea Monsters, he was available. I guess he finished his course or whatever. And we said, do you want to do this one? So he came up with this. He was very interested in those graphics, the chevrons and all the singles and all the stuff that surrounded that era. It was very kind of graphic, and it had a certain feel to it. It was kind of almost cartoonish, but then quite dark as well. So we thought that was great. It really suited the music. So it was all his idea.
That's good. And no, that's pretty good. And how long did it take to record the album, actually?
About 12 days, I think.
Jesus.
It was very quick. Because that was one of the things about Albini. Because I think the previous record, Bizarro, I think we'd spent 6 weeks there doing that, and that's because I suppose we were kind of we were persuaded that the best way to make a good record is to do it step by step. So with Bizarro, we did the drums first, then we added the bass, and then we did the first guitar and the second guitar, and it's a very meticulous process, and certainly you have got control over everything every step of the way, and you can change things, and you can manipulate the sound and whatever. But with Albini, it was right back to the way we used to do it before we'd signed to RCA, which was basically recording as a band. So basically the band are in a room, they're all mic'd up, and you play live, and he records that. And the only thing we did as overdubs was the vocal, really. And even that, he was kind of saying, just sing it live, which I didn't want to do, but that was his style. His argument was, well, the Beatles used to record albums in a weekend, and we'd say, well, we're not the Beatles. However, we do take the point that yes, there's no reason to spend 6 weeks and spend half a day on a snare drum sound. Yeah. Where all right, okay, it might be the perfect snare drum sound by the end of that session, but does it really matter? I think what's more important is the sound of a band in a room playing together, and that kind of certain ambience that you get from that, which it's like a live performance. It's different from there's something there about the atmosphere and that kind of that feeling, and that was Albini's forte, really, to capture that sound of the band. Really, I mean, that's what we did, and that's why it was. And the mixing was quick. For the same, he almost mixed it as he went along. Really, it was almost like a live concert. Just committed to tape, really. Whereas with other people, you might spend ages mixing as well and stuff. So I think he felt like a mix was almost part of the performance. Here's the start of the song. You do a few fader moves and change things, and that was it. And that was never going to happen again. It was just that one time that he did that, and that was how he felt was a mix, really. So yeah, it was very quick.
That's pretty good.
And to be honest, since then I've always done it like that. I think it was a wake up call for me, because I think it kind of made me think, yes, we don't need to spend all this time at great expense as well. To be honest, Sea Monsters was a lot cheaper because it was quicker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, throughout the 90s, a lot of other bands followed that like Radiohead with The Bends, Oasis with Definitely Maybe, in Bash get the live setting. And that's probably the reason why those early 90s records hold up so well.
Possibly, yeah. I think you talk about Peel, and we did a lot of Peel sessions, and that's the same thing. You record 4 songs in a day. You go in there, spend a couple of hours setting up, bang them out, mix them. We're in there for 12 hours or something. What we used to do. Obviously, we don't do anymore. But I think it's there's definitely something to be said for that technique.
Okay, I'm on to my last question, which is, can we expect any new music?
Yeah, we can. We have been hampered by the pandemic a little bit, because there are a lot of new songs and a lot of new ideas, and snatches of guitar parts and lyrics and tunes and stuff. But it's very hard to do it remotely. So like John, our guitarist, will send me a riff, and I'll put it on my computer, and I'll add my bits, add a bit of singing, and I'll send it to somebody else, and it'll go to a bass player or a drummer or whatever. And it's backwards and forwards like that all the time. Whereas, it's time consuming, because if you want to change something, the whole process breaks down. Okay, instead of playing that bit, can you play this bit? So he has to go back and do the new demo, send it to me again, and it all goes. Whereas in a room, obviously you all stood there and you say, don't do that, do this. Okay, great, bang it out. Took 3 minutes. Yeah, that's better. Thank you very much. So it's a lot more efficient when we're all able to rehearse together. And we have started to do that now that the lockdown has been loosening a little bit. And obviously we've been rehearsing for the live stream and stuff. So yeah, and that's your question is, we are looking to record this year. So whenever it's finished when it's finished, basically, I suppose is the short answer.
Well, I look forward to it. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck with the reissue and the new music.
Thank you very much indeed.
Take care.
Cheers. How do I stop it?